อันนี้ สวัสดีครับโอเควันนี้มีเข้าเรียนกี่คนฮะผมเริ่มเลยไหมหรือว่าให้รอก่อน
สักครู่นะคะอาจารย์เดี๋ยวขอสอบถามให้แป๊บหนึ่งนะคะ
ได้ครับได้ครับ
สวัสดีค่ะอาจารย์
ครับ
อาจารย์อัดได้ตามปกติเลยนะคะ
อัดตามปกตินะครับโอเค
โอเคค่ะเพราะว่าไม่แน่ใจว่าน้องจะเข้ากันไหมอะไรค่ะก็อาจารย์ก็อัดได้ตามปกติเลยค่ะ
ปกติเลยโอเค
ขอบ
ครับ
คุณค่ะ
คลาสนี้เป็นภาษาอังกฤษเหมือนเดิมใช่ไหมฮะหรือว่า
อะไร
อัน
นะคะอาจารย์
คลาสนี้ให้สอนเป็นภาษาอังกฤษเหมือนครั้งที่แล้วหรือเปล่าหรือว่า
พูดตามปกติแบ
ตาม
บที่อา
ตาม
จารย์บอก
ปกติเลยนะโอเคครับโอเคครับ
โอเคค่ะ
ครับสวัสดีครับ Okay, so I assume everyone's is already familiar with me, and the lesson today will be delivered to you in English, like the last time. Okay. Just give me one moment. I just need to open my file. Uh, okay, guys. Just about to share my screen. Here we go. Start broadcasting. Okay. Okay. I'm not sure how many of you guys are there. Um, so good afternoon, everyone. Um, welcome back to IELTS Bridge Writing, English 4 Level 5. Okay, so let's continue from where we left off the last time. So, last time, just to give you a little bit of a review of what we did. So, we talked about exam criteria. So, basically, these are the things they look at, things they take into account in order to give you guys the band. Okay, so you want to score good marks. You need to pay attention to task achievement. So you need to be able to write not less than 150 words. Make sure that you give them a summary of all the key features in the graph, not just giving them any random features or giving them your personal opinions. Okay, so everything has to come from the plot or the graph. Okay, in order to highlight any key features, you guys have to be able to make comparisons. Okay, and with all the key features, you need to back them up with the supporting data. So basically, numbers. Coherence and cohesion, you have to show them a good idea development. So you start off with an overview. Basically, it's the main claim, an overall claim of the entire plot. Okay, and then you elaborate upon the overview, adding all the features, adding all the supporting data. It's kind of like painting, your shape. Okay, overview defines the area or the boundary of the shape. Okay, that you want to to color. Okay, and the body section is where you color the shape. Lexical usage has to do with your ability to use a range of vocabulary, different kinds of words, and you must be able to use them correctly, meaning you have to be careful with collocations, which are words that have to be used together so that they sound natural. And you also have to mind your spellings. Okay. Grammar is old. Grammar is all about being able to use any structures appropriately. Okay. And also you need to show them a variety of the structures that you're capable of using. And when you use them, you have to follow the rules associated with each structures. Okay, so that's it. Last time we also talked about words that you have to use to describe changes. Okay, so we have intransitive verb, we have noun. Okay. Words are in the second table here. I've got you some adverbs and adjectives you can use to describe the characteristics of the change in the plot. Okay, so when you see a sharp slope, okay, or a steep slope, that means something changes rapidly or changes significantly. Okay. All right. And on this page, this tables give you adjectives you can use to make comparisons between two quantities. So when one quantity is bigger than the others, you can either describe those two quantities using type 1 adjective, type 2 adjective. So what you need to be careful when you use type 1 adjective is the position where you place all these adjectives. So remember, adjectives are placed before nouns. Okay, so don't be tricked or be trapped into thinking that adjective can comes after a noun. Some people translate word for word, and they have a tendency to put adjective after a noun. That's not correct according to English grammar. So adjective precede a noun. Okay. All right. Type 1 adjectives are used with any kind of noun. There's no limit. There's no restrictions. But for type 2 adjective, you have to use them only with quantities, words that represent quantities like number, percentage, amount. The structure in which you normally use with type 2 adjective is a subject, linking verb, and adjective. Yeah, for example, if you look at this chart here, you want to compare class A students and class B students. You see that the bar that represents class A student is much taller than class B. So what does that mean? That means there are more students in class A than class B. So there we go. I have just shown you how to use type 1 adjective, right? I use more, and I put more before students because students are nouns, right? There are more students in class A than class B. What if I want to use type 2 adjective? So I have to pick I have to pick a larger or higher or greater. And the way I arrange the sentence is going to be like this. I'm going to start my sentence with words that represent quantity, in this case, number, right? I'm going to say the number of students. And I'm going to add the complement just to identify which class I'm talking about. So I'm going to say the number of students in class A is, okay, don't forget linking verb, very important. If you don't have linking verb, then you don't have a complete sentence, all right? And a sentence without a verb in English is known as a fragment. And a fragment is a basic grammatical error. It will cause you to lose a lot of marks. Okay, so don't forget linking verb. The number of students in class A is larger than the number of students in class B. Okay, all right. Excuse me. Give me one moment. Just needs to clear my throat. So, comparative modifiers. So sometimes when you see two different quantities, when one quantity is so much bigger than the other quantity, okay, you can add these adverbs that I circled. Okay, much, considerably, significantly, a great deal, and far. So what do these adverbs do? Okay, they are used to intensify the discrepancy. Okay, so when you say, for example, quantity A is larger than quantity B, now without seeing the pictures, there's no way of telling whether quantity A is so much bigger or just slightly bigger than quantity B. Okay, so you want to use this adverb when the discrepancy is huge. Okay, like quantity A would be like 10 times, 20 times greater. Okay, then you can use this adverb to highlight the huge discrepancy. So how to use this adverb? To use this adverb, you just place one of them in front of the comparative adjective, just like in the example shown below here. There are considerably more students in class A than class B. Okay, so considerably, that's an adverb that I pick from this list. Okay, an adverb modified adjective, so I put it right next to the comparative adjective. Okay, so this is going to be a little bit counterintuitive to Thai language speaker because we tend to put adverb at the end of a sentence. But this is not the case for English, right? Adverb is before an adjective that is modified. So there are considerably more students in class A than class B. Okay? Now for type 2 adjective, it's pretty much the same. Okay? The number of students in class A is considerably higher than the number of students in class B. That's how you put the adverb. Okay, next is to put times, okay? Times. So when do we put, what does times mean first of all? Okay. So when you compare two quantities, and you divide the larger quantity by the smaller quantity, the number that you get is a factor that signify how much quantity B is larger than how much quantity A is larger than quantity B. So say quantity B is about 20 units, okay? Quantity B is 10 units. 20 divided by 10 is 2, okay? So that means quantity A is 2 times larger than quantity B. Now, instead of 2 times, you can use words like twice, because twice and 2 times, they mean the same thing, okay? But if you divide one quantity by the other and you get something like 5 or 6, 7, but there's no such word to describe 5 times or 6 times. So you have no other choice but to use 5 times and 6 times, just the compound words themselves. Okay, but for 2 times, you have twice. 3 times, you have thrice. Okay, so let's look at the examples, okay? So I was going to, describe the difference between class A and class B. So class A, there are 20. Class B, there are 10. So class A, right? Class A has 2 times more students than class B. You can also write it as there are 2 times more students in class A than class B. Like I said earlier, instead of using 2 times, you can use twice. Okay, now let's look at the next example. The number of students in class A is 2 times higher than the number of students in class B. So I did nothing here other than changing from the word considerably from the previous example to 2 times. Okay. Can I use twice? Of course. Okay. I can also say the number of students in class A is twice higher than the number of students in class B. I can also do that. Right. Let's move on to the use of as. Okay, so this is like a parallel structure, like neither nor, either or, not only but also, and we have as. So as has quite is versatility. It can be used in for many purposes. Okay, when you see two quantities that are exactly the same, you can use as. Okay, or when you see two quantities that are not equal, say one quantity is twice greater than the other quantity, you can also use as. So you can use as when two quantities are equal, or when one quantity is some factor greater than the other. Okay, but let's first try to understand the grammar behind as. So the first as is an adverb. Okay, what does adverb do in English? It can describe adjective, or it can describe an adverb. Okay, so when you modify any adjective or adverb with the first as, it simply adds a meaning to your combination. Like as rich means equally rich, right? As beautiful means equally beautiful. As handsome, equally handsome. So whatever adjective you put behind this adjective, it simply gives the meaning of being equally, okay? Being equal. Right. Let's look at an easy example. Suppose I have $1 million US dollars. Okay, so by, I think by today's economic standards, if you have $1 million US dollars, you're rich, you're millionaire, right? Okay, and my friend also has 1 million US dollars. Okay, so the way I see it, we are equally rich. Okay, so how do I use as to describe us two? Okay, so I can say I am as rich as my friend, right? Or my friend is as rich as me. So the first as goes before the adjective rich. What about the second as? What does it do? The second as here is nothing but a conjunction. Okay? The second as is just a conjunction. What does conjunction do? Any conjunction links two sentences together. Okay? So when I say I am as rich as my friend, I basically join two sentences together. So the first sentence is I am rich. The second sentence is my friend is rich. So we have two sentences. I am rich. My friend is rich. Now, when I join these two sentences together, I can omit words that have already been used. Okay? So whatever is going to be repeated a second time, I can simply, leave them out. Right? So instead of saying, I am as rich as my friend is rich, I can just drop is rich. Okay? The second time they're going to be used, they can just drop is rich. So I can just say, I am as rich as my friend. Full stop. Okay? Easy? Easy. Let's move on. Okay. Now let's look at a more challenging example. If you look at this plot, Class B has 10 students, and Class C also has 10 students. So how do I describe this? I can say there are as many students in Class B as Class C. Okay, I can say that. I can also say Class B has as many students as Class C. But if I want to use what we call the type 2 adjective, okay? So type 2 adjective begins with quantity, like that, numbers, okay? So the number of students in Class B is as high, you see? So when you want to say equally high, you use as high. The number of students in Class B is as high as the number of students in Class C. All right? Okay. So that's it. That's how you use as to describe two equal quantities. Now, what if two quantities are not equal? So when quantity is some number of factors greater than the other quantities, you can use times. Like just like the previous example, previously we used times with comparative adjective, but now we are using times with the first as the adverb. Okay. So let's look at the first example. There are twice as many students in Class A as Class B. If I don't have the word twice in front of as, it simply means Class A equals Class B in number of students. But when I add twice, it changes the meaning, okay? It changes the meaning. It tells you that Class A is actually greater than B by a factor of 2. So whatever number of students there are in Class A, Class B will be half of it. If there are 100 students in Class A, then there are 50 students in Class B. If there are 80 students in Class A, then there are 40 students in Class B. All right, so Class B is just half of Class A. What about type 2 adjective? Type 2 adjective is the same, the number of students in Class A is 2 times as high as the number of students in Class B. If I don't have 2 times, that means A and B are equal. But with 2 times in front of the first as, it simply means Class A is 2 times greater than Class B. Okay, so far so good, I suppose. Moving on to superlative adjective. So superlative adjective, you use it when you are describing 3 or more quantities. Okay, so with 2 quantities, you are more likely to rely on comparative adjective. But with 3 or more quantities, you could use superlative form. So in the previous example, there are students in class A, B, and C. Okay, by comparison, you see that class A has the most students. Okay, so you can say there are the most students in class A. Okay, but if you look at it from a different standpoint, class B has the fewest students. In fact, class B and C have the fewest students because they equal. Right. If you want to paraphrase, you can say the number of students in class A is the highest. Likewise, you can say the number of students in class B is the lowest. So type 1 and type 2 adjective, you can use them for paraphrasing. So when you want to create a variety in your use of language, you can switch, back and forth between type 1 and type 2 adjective. Okay, now sometimes people want to add by far in the sentence, and they use superlative adjectives. What does by far mean? What does it do? So by far doesn't have any particular meaning. There's no there's no direct translation in our language. You don't translate by far. So what does it do? It's there just to emphasize the greatest quantity. It's just there to emphasize the superlative adjective. It's like putting a highlight marker over the word, the superlative adjective. That's the only effect that it has on the sentence, right? It doesn't add any significant meaning. It's just there to highlight. So whether I add this or not, it will not make any difference in meaning, okay? But when I add by far, it put emphasis on the superlative adjective that I use in my sentence. So class A has by far the most students. The number of students in class A is by far the highest. Yeah, that's it. Now, if you want to do some ranking, you can. Right. So you do ranking in what? Descending order. So the largest is the biggest. I mean, the largest quantities come first, followed by the next largest. Okay. So you second and third, they are known as ordinal number. Okay, with the subsequent large quantities. So class A has 20 students. So class A is number one. But for number one ranking, we don't use any word. We don't say class A has the first most students know. The word first is simply not there. Okay. So class A has the most students. You can say class A has by far the most students, but not class A has the first most students. Okay, now when you talk about the second in ranking, you can place the order number second between article the and the superlative adjective. Just like an example, class B and C has the second most students. Don't forget superlative adjective though, because if you say class B has second students, it changes the meaning. Okay, don't forget superlative. Class B has the second most students. If you want to go for type 2 adjective, there's no problem. Just put, it's the same thing. Just put second or third right in front of the superlative adjective. So the number of students in class A is the second highest. Simple as that. Okay. Next, future projection. So future projection is all about reporting somebody's prediction. So sometimes you see a chart. There are many cases where prediction has been made regarding any particular quantities. But you are not the one who made that prediction. Someone has made that prediction already. And your job is to report that prediction. Okay, so let's look at an example here. Let's just change this year to maybe 2026. Okay. So this quantity is not yet realized. Okay, this is called unrealized quantity. But the quantity is 2009. This is known as realized quantity. It's already known, it's already happened. So what happened in 2009? So this plot represents the percentage of overseas students in Australia from Asia. So basically they conduct survey, right, in Australia. They were looking for Asian international students, okay? And they found that out of 100 students, 60 of them are from Asia, okay? So if there are 100 international students in Australia in 2009, 60 of them are from Asia. Okay, so I can say some things like in 2009, 60% of the international students were Asian or came from Asia or came from Asian countries, right? But in 2026, somebody expected that the percentage of Asian students would rise to 80%. So this is not yet realized. This is what somebody hoped to see. Okay? So you can say some things like someone expected that the percentage of Asian students would rise to 80% in 2026. Yep, you can say that. You can use the reported structure, reported speech structure. Someone expected. Why am I using past tense? Because someone already made that prediction. Someone expected that the percentage of Asian students would rise to 80% in 2026. But it is quite clumsy and awkward to put someone as a subject because we don't know who that person is. So I like to drop this unknown subject. So how do I do that? Well, I can make this the subject instead of someone. Okay, I can replace someone with percentage. So I can say the percentage. Okay, of Asian students. Okay, now I can use passive voice. So the percentage of Asian students was expected by someone, but I'm not going to include someone in my sentence. I just leave it like this. The percentage of Asian students was expected. Next is to put would increase, but I cannot put would in my sentence because there's no subject for would anymore. So I'll just modify the verb to infinitive. Was expected to rise to 80% in 2026. Okay, simple as that. So this is also a reported speech, except that the structure is more like is passive rather than active, because we don't know who made that prediction. Now, if you look at this list here, okay, if you look at this list here, basically, it follows the same structures. Be plus past participle and also infinitive, okay? So if you don't want to use expected, you can use other words like likely, forecast, set, or predict, okay? So it just give you more options to use. All right, that's it. If you want to, make some changes to the sentence, you guys might want to focus, like you want to put emphasis on the movement here. You can do that. All you have to do is put it right at the beginning of a sentence. So instead of using rise, I'm using growth. 20% is just a difference. So a 20% growth, then use the same passive structure. Was forecast, or was expected, or was predicted. But we're not going to be using infinitive here. Instead, we use a prepositional phrase. 20% growth was forecast for. For what? For the proportion of overseas students from Asia. Okay? That's it. Okay. So far, we have learned quite a few structures and words that are relevant for type 1. Okay. But there are a lot more to learn. Okay. So I'm going to dedicate this section for self-learning. So you guys have got the basics. Okay. You have developed understanding of the basic relevant structures. Okay. So here are some more phrases that might come in handy when you're describing the graph. Okay. So practical language usage here. This is for self-learning. Matching the, for example. Okay. So when you describe two similar quantities, not really similar. When you look at their change in the figures, and they sort of have the same characteristics. They were both increasing, and they were both increasing slowly, or they were both increasing significantly. All right. You can use matching. So, for example, the sales have increased for 4 consecutive months, matching the increase in June 2004. So we talk about two increases that look very similar to one another. Okay. So that is it. What else? Okay. Yeah. As opposed to, I particularly like this phrase. So as opposed to, we can use to talk about two quantities that are opposite of each other. Like the first quantity might be going up, and the other quantity is going down. Okay. So when they have two opposite action, two opposite behavior, as opposed to, it's quite useful because it allows you not to state the obvious. Yeah, for example, the sales during the first half of the year maintained the average of $20 million as opposed to the latter half. Okay, so when you say as opposed to the latter half, that means the second half of the year, the sales was not 20, it was far below that, right? It's way below that. Okay, next is to use with plus a noun plus present participle. Okay, this structure is also useful, and I particularly like this one as well. So let's look at an example. The telephone became more popular over time because the percentage of families with this device increased from 37% to 75%. This is a long sentence. So how do we shorten it? We can say the telephone became more popular over time. Okay. Now, instead of using an adverb clause, I can just use with the percentage. Now, this word percentage is not the subject in the sentence. It's the object. So I have to use non-finite verb with the word percentage. So I can't say with the percentage grow from. I can't do that. I have to change it to present participle. So with the percentage of user growing from 37% to 1%. Okay? All good? So that's it. Okay. Now let's move on to chapter 2. So in chapter 2, we're going to be talking about how to highlight the significant features. Okay. So let us look at this graph here. So this graph here shows you sales figures in two different businesses. One is fast food, serving, restaurant serving fast food, and the other is a more classic, more expensive places to eat, sit-down restaurant. Right. So to highlight the key features, you can follow this guideline here. So first, you can look for similarities. Okay. So in terms of similarities, what are similar between these two quantities? If you look at 1970, you notice that the sales figures were the same for fast food and for sit-down restaurant. They have the exact same figures, right? And also, if you look at changes in the quantity over the next 30 years, they have an uptrend despite, one quantity having decelerating change. So it looks like it's slowing down, right? For sit-down restaurants, it looks like the sales were slowing down. So the rate of change was decreasing, but the output is still positive. Okay? So it's increasing, but at decreasing rate. However, for fast food restaurant, it seems to have a linear, it seems to exhibit linear behavior. So from 1980, you see a greater positive slope. So the sales increase at a uniform or not at a uniform speed, okay, with a positive slope. So we can say throughout the 30 years period, both sales have an uptrend. What about big difference? Okay. Now, big difference can be found in terms of movement and also at a particular point in time. So if you look at the movement, the sales for fast food seems to have a much faster rate of change, right? Compared to sit down, which is quite noticeable after 1990. And because of that, in 2000, okay, because sales for fast food were increasing very quickly, whereas sales for sit downs were increasing very slowly. So in 2000, we see a big difference between sales for fast food and sales for sit down restaurant. All right. So for big difference, you can say there was a huge discrepancy, right? In 2000, you look at the trend, we can say fast food restaurant grow at a much higher rate than sit down restaurant. If you look at the peak, in order to describe a peak, you have to see an uptrend and a downtrend. So something was going up and it stopped and it took a turn and it started falling down. That's when you have a peak. But the way I see it, both quantities don't seem to, get tired. It's still increasing. Maybe sit down at some point after 2000 will start to drop because look at the rate, it was slowing down, right? So at some point it will start to drop and then you can highlight the peak. Okay, but we don't see any peak here in this time frame, so we can skip that. And let's look at the highest point and the lowest point. So the highest point is recorded in 2000 for both restaurants, right? And the lowest points were recorded in 1970. What about exceptions? So exceptions have to do with things that exhibit weird behavior or the odd one out. So we can't talk about exception if we only have two quantities. We need at least three quantities. And we have to identify one quantity that exhibit a strange behavior. So we're going to skip that as well. What about any other noticeable features? Okay. So basically, it's anything that you guys think we should include in your report. Like, if you look at what happened after 1980. So the first 10 years, sit-down restaurants were taking the lead, right? They've been constantly making greater sales than its rival, the fast food. But after 1980, fast food just overtook sit-down restaurant. And after that, it has been taking the lead. And sit-down restaurant just almost stopped increasing Okay, so that's another noticeable features. Now, I'd like you guys to take 3 minutes to fill the gaps with words that you can find in the box below. Okay, so one word can be used only one time. Okay, so let's take 3 minutes to fill the gaps, and I'll come back and give you the answers. Okay. So, what should we fill in the first gap? And in fast food restaurants and sit-down restaurants. The word is increase. Okay. So, what happened to my pencil? It's not okay. It's working now. So the word is an increase, okay? An increase in fast food restaurant and sit-down restaurant can be seen. Talk about 3 decades is a period of 30 years. We need a preposition. Can be seen throughout. Can be seen throughout the 3 decades. In 1970, fast food restaurant made as many sales as sit-down restaurants. Okay, fast food restaurant made as many sales as sit-down restaurant. The fast food and sit-down restaurants so exactly what? Exactly the same. All right, exactly the same number of meals in 1970. Next is big differences. There was a what? Huge discrepancy, okay, in the number of meals sold between fast food and sit-down restaurant. There was a huge discrepancy. Okay? There was a huge discrepancy. After 1980, fast food restaurant experienced what? Experienced a significant growth. Okay, experienced a significant growth in their sales. With their counterpart sales climb, while their counterpart sales climb at a sluggish rate. Okay. Next, the two restaurants made what? The two restaurants made the highest sales of meals in 2000. Now, for the lowest point, year 1970 saw the lowest sales of meals in both fast food and sit-down restaurants. Okay, moving on to any other noticeable features. It was not until 1980 that the figure for fast food restaurant began to rise. Began to rise what? Began to rise at a rapid rate. Okay, rise at a rapid rate. Okay, so that's it. Let us now talk about let's just do this exercise here. So this bar chart shows you hours of unpaid work per week done by people in different categories. Okay, so we have what? Married men and married women. Okay, and the bar chart simply show us the number of hours that they work, that they do housework. So unpaid work here means housework, okay? Housework to do in 1 week. For those with no children, you notice that. You look at a married women, okay? For married women who do not have any children, they spend about 30 hours every week doing housework. So housework includes things like childcare. Sorry, since they don't have any children, so would be housework, be gardening, cleaning up the house. Married men, they spend about 20 hours weekly. Okay, if you don't have children, it's only 20 hours weekly on housework. Okay, now for those who have between 1 and 2 children, you look at married women, the number of hours just skyrocketed to 50 hours per week. Okay, so that is quite a leap from 30 when they have no children to 50. It's quite a big leap. But if you look at the number of hours men spend on housework, it barely changes. Okay, stays at 20 hours. Barely changes. Now, when they have 3 children, married women spend slightly more hours than when they have 1 or 2 children. Okay? But the increase here is very insignificant. Okay? It's only a small rise. But if you look at how many hours married men spend on housework, you notice that they actually spend less hours. Right? It's quite interesting. Right? You probably expected to spend the same or more, but no. With 3 children, men spend less hours. So why do you think that is the case? All right, it doesn't matter why this is the case. Okay, you're not going to include that in the report because there's no evidence to justify it. Okay, but it's it's interesting to think anyway. Right? If you ask me, I'd say men will have to men will have to go out and do some paid work to provide for the family, and so they spend less time doing housework, helping the wife doing housework because they have to be out there making money. That's probably the reason, but it doesn't really matter because you're not going to include that in the report anyway. Right. So let's answer the first question. What do you think could be an overview? So for an overview, you have to look at it from an overall perspective. Okay, you have to see the pattern. Okay, you have to recognize the pattern. So what pattern do you see here? If you look at if you focus on change in the number of hours, change the number of hours spent on housework by women, you notice that they are directly proportional to the number of children. right? As the number of children increases, the number of hours that married women spend on housework increases. So they are directly proportional. They go hand in hand. Yeah? But the number of hours that married spend on housework is indirectly proportional to the number of children that they have. Because as the number of children increases, as they have more children, they actually spend less hours doing housework. So that's the main pattern that I've noticed. Okay? So I can contrast these the patterns that women have in comparisons to men. They have different patterns, right? So in English, I can say the number of hours that married women, sorry, the number of hours that, yeah, that's already correct. The number of hours that married women spend on housework increases with the number of children, whereas the number of hours that married men spend on housework decreases with the number of the children. Of course, they can say that, but it's very long, isn't it? So, what can I do to make the sentence more concise? Okay, I can use words like as opposed to. I can say the number of children. Let me just write it down. The number of hours married women spend on housework increases with children, with their children. As opposed to men. So I can say that the number of hours married women spend on housework increases with their children as opposed to men. I can also say the number of children seems to be directly the number of children seems to be directly proportional to the amount of time women spend on housework. As opposed to men. Okay, now the next question, what can be said about the first two bars? So the first two bar is here. Okay? The first two bars. So we see that there's a slight difference, right? Married women spend slightly more hours on housework than married men. So that's one thing that can be said about the first two bars. You can say married women spend slightly more hours on housework than married men, right? Married women spend slightly more hours on housework than married men. Like I said, what can be said about the first two white bars? Okay, so we talk about the first two white bars now. Okay, talk about this white bar and the second white bar. So yeah, the second is much taller than the first. So what does that mean? That means women or married women who have two children, married women who have two children, spend significantly more hours on housework than married men. Okay? That's what you can say about it. And that's it. Right. Now, before we move on, I also like to show you another strategy, okay, to highlight key features, okay, in case you guys don't want to follow this guideline, okay. So let me just offer you an alternative to highlight the key features. Okay, so let us assume that we all have gone for a trip, okay, to another country, maybe Japan or Korea or New Zealand, okay. Now let's say you guys spend between a week and two, okay, traveling at your destination, okay. So you spend a week. How many hours is that? Well, one day is about 24 hours, so 7 days, that's about 168 hours, right? 168 hours traveling. But let's say it's after your trip, you arrange an appointment with one of your friends, maybe for a coffee. And let's say you guys are on a rush. You have less than 2 minutes, all right? to talk about your trip. You want to tell your friends about your trip. All right, the trip that you spent about 168 hours on, but you only have 2 minutes. That's significantly less than the amount of time that you spend traveling. You have only 2 minutes. So what are you going to tell your friends? Okay, obviously you can't be recounting all the details, right? Because you only have 2 minutes. So you want to just talk about all the main features of your trip. Now, how will you begin that? Okay, you want to begin by giving your friends an overall feelings of your experience. Okay, so you have to summarize your 168 hours experience traveling in Japan or Korea or New Zealand in one sentence. In fact, in just one adjective. How was that experience? Did you like it or did you not like it? All right, it comes down to this binary question. Did you like the trip? If you like the trip, then you can use positive adjective like amazing, fabulous, fantastic, extremely good, all right, memorable. So I'm going to assume that I like my trip to Japan. And I'm going to say my trip to Japan was amazing. So it's just one word, okay? It all comes down to one word. My trip to Japan was amazing, and that is my overview. So it's going to raise questions. How is it amazing? In what way was it amazing? So I'm going to have to break it down, right? I have to break it down. Now, I could be talking about everything that I did for the past 7 days. Okay? So I can say, hey, the first day, I got up at what time and we went where? And then we came back to our accommodation, our hotel. The second day, we woke